Before death was hidden behind polished doors and professional rooms, it stayed where it happened. In the bed, in the parlor, in the air of the house. You are inside that house now. The shutters are closed, the fire is low, and everyone is speaking in whispers because the dead have not left. There is no modern funeral home waiting down the street. No refrigerated room. No trained staff arriving with quiet efficiency. The family must begin at once. The first danger is not a scream. It is time. Warmth remains in the body for a while, but every hour changes what the room can bear. In many homes, relatives washed the dead themselves. They lifted heavy limbs, changed linen, closed the jaw, and tried to make death look peaceful. This was love, duty, and survival at the same time. If you waited too long, grief became harder to touch, harder to move, harder to hide. The house was not built for this. It was built for cooking, sleeping, praying, arguing, and surviving the weather. Now it must become a death chamber. A bowl of water, a towel, a clean shirt, a sheet. These are not symbols anymore. They are the tools between order and panic. By the third or fourth hour, stiffness can begin. The jaw, the neck, the hands. A body that was once familiar starts to resist the living. If you are responsible, you learn quickly. Move too roughly, and the room may answer with sounds or fluids that no one warned you about. The people of the past were not less afraid than you. They simply had fewer places to send their fear. The parlor becomes the center of the house. Chairs are arranged. Mirrors are covered. Clocks may be stopped. Black cloth turns ordinary furniture into ritual. Outside, neighbors begin to arrive. Inside, the air grows heavy. Every candle, every crowded coat, every closed window makes the room warmer. Heat is the enemy no prayer can fully stop. In summer, families used ice, open windows, herbs, flowers, and speed. The body might be placed on a cooling board or near blocks of ice. But ice melts. Water leaks. The floor remembers everything. Flowers were not just beautiful. Strong lilies and other heavy scents helped mask what the house was trying to hide. You stand near the door and breathe shallowly. The smell is not yet overwhelming, but everyone knows it is coming if the burial is delayed. Before widespread embalming, the safest answer was often speed. A vigil, a service, a coffin, and burial within a day or two. But grief does not always move fast. Relatives travel. Weather blocks roads. Clergy must be found. The cabinet maker must build the coffin. In many communities, the coffin came from a man who also made tables, chairs, and cabinets. Death was still part of household labor. He measured the body. He chose the boards. He nailed together the box that would leave the home before the smell took control. Until that coffin arrived, the dead remained among the living. Not in a separate institution, but a few steps from the kitchen. The wake had another purpose beyond mourning. People watched. They waited for any sign that death had been mistaken. Fear of premature burial was not just folklore. Medicine was limited, diagnosis could be uncertain, and families feared closing the lid too soon. So someone stayed awake. A brother, a widow, a neighbor, eyes fixed on a still chest in the candlelight. Every creak of the house becomes a signal. Every shadow looks like movement. Exhaustion turns grief into suspicion. Could you sit there through the night, close enough to watch, but afraid of what you might see? The living also had to protect themselves. Without modern sanitation, body fluids, soiled bedding, and contaminated cloth were handled inside the home. There were no disposable gloves for most families. There was hot water, soap, linen, superstition, habit, and whatever courage remained. The poorest rooms made it worse. Small apartments, crowded tenements, damp walls, no private parlor, and little space between the living and the dead. In cities, death could press against life with no distance at all. One room might hold grief, sleep, food, and the body. This is why the rise of funeral parlors mattered. Urban families often needed somewhere else to hold the wake because home had become too small. But before that escape existed, the house absorbed everything. Tears, odor, fear, visitors, ritual, silence. Your survival depends on rules that nobody writes down. Keep the room cool. Keep the crowd controlled. Keep candles away from cloth. Keep dignity intact. Then insects arrive, not always in a swarm. Sometimes as one black speck at the window, one sound near the curtain, one warning too small to ignore. In warm months, a delay can change the room quickly. The family must cover, cool, clean, and hurry without appearing disrespectful. That is the cruelest part. Every practical act looks cold if done too openly. Every delay looks loving until the house turns against you. The undertaker begins as a helper, not yet the master of death. He brings boards, cloth, chairs, a hearse if the family can afford it. After the Civil War, embalming grows more visible in America. It allows bodies to travel farther and wakes to last longer. But in many homes, the older pattern remains. The family still receives mourners under the same roof where the person died. The parlor is packed. Breath clouds the glass. Wet coats steam. Candle smoke stains the ceiling. The coffin waits at the center. People bring food, prayers, stories, and fear. They look at the body, then look away, then look again, because this is what mourning requires. For the person in charge, there is no private grief. You watch the temperature, the lamps, the door, the visitors, the clock. If the jaw loosens, someone must fix it. If fabric shifts, someone must straighten it. If the scent changes, someone must act first. The dead are quiet, but the house is not. Floorboards groan. Water drips from melting ice. The wind pushes soot down the chimney. At midnight, duty becomes heavier than fear. You understand why rituals were needed. They gave shape to something too large to face directly. Covering mirrors, stopping clocks, hanging black crepe. These customs were not just superstition. They helped the household admit that time had broken. But rituals cannot stop the body. They can only help the living stand near it without falling apart. Mourning brings the next decision. If the burial ground is far, the coffin must leave before weather, roads, or decomposition make the journey worse. The coffin is carried feet first. The doorway feels too narrow. The home that sheltered a life now struggles to release it. Outside, the street waits in silence. Neighbors remove hats. Wheels sink into mud. The procession begins because there is no safer delay. This moment is not just emotional. It is logistical survival. Weight, weather, distance, and time must all be beaten before the grave is reached. For the poor, there may be no carriage, no polished hearse, no paid assistance. Only shoulders under wood and a road that seems longer than mercy. For the wealthy, the danger is better dressed but not erased. Flowers, drapery, and hired hands cannot change what heat does to the body. Modern death care would eventually move much of this labor away from families. Funeral directors, embalming rooms, refrigeration, and regulation changed the house forever. The parlor became the living room. Death moved out, and the modern home learned to pretend it had never belonged there. But for centuries, survival meant staying close. Close enough to wash, close enough to watch, close enough to carry. You had to manage disgust without shame, fear without escape, grief without privacy, and danger without the tools you would expect today. The worst part was not simply the smell, the insects, or the night watch. It was knowing that love required you to remain in the room. If you broke down, someone else had to lift the cloth. If you hesitated, the heat kept working. If you delayed, the house paid the price. And when the coffin finally crossed the threshold, the danger did not vanish. The room still held the air of what had happened there. The family cleaned, opened windows, burned cloth, washed boards, and tried to return the house to ordinary life. But ordinary life had changed. Every chair knew where it had been placed. Every covered mirror remembered why it had gone dark. This was death before distance. No polished lobby, no hidden room, no professional wall between your body and the truth of mortality. So if death stayed inside your house, and the night grew warm, and every hour made the room harder to endure, could you survive this?